Hi, I'm Mohsin and this is my wife Katlin, and we're co-owners of the Pakalachian food truck. Our food truck is really unique. We actually serve Pakistani food mixed with Southern Appalachian food. Both are just representations of the cultures that we grew up in, and we're really excited to get into talking about our culture and where we got started on the food truck.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us in our front yard. A really special shout out to the creators and the forces behind this event. You know, to be able to celebrate and really explore Appalachian culture, I think this is a really good thing. So here we go. We're going to quickly talk about how we got started. We're going to touch on some of the ingredients for both cultures. We're going to talk about some of the driving forces behind why we do what we do. And we just hope to have a lot of fun here for about 15 or 20 minutes. So,
awesome. Well, we started the food truck back in 2018. Yeah. So we started the food truck in 2018. Katlin is in education, and I'm into conservation and ecological management. And we were just driving down 81 in Southwest Virginia, and we were thinking, you know, how can we contribute to our community while doing something that helps us grow and helps us do the things that we love. So we love growing heirloom vegetables and plants. We love bringing biodiversity into our area, and most importantly, we love educating people on sustainability and what we care about.
Yeah, and really, we were making this food in our kitchen, right? So Mohsin would take nights where he made Pakistani food, and I would take nights where I made, you know, foods I grew up with as a kid. And the next day, our leftovers would just kind of combine together. And literally, we started trying these things together, and it just made sense. We started realizing, you know, these two cultures have more in common than maybe people think. You know, they're seemingly different, but there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely important to mention that, so my family is from Pakistan. They moved from Pakistan in the 80s, and I grew up ethnically Pakistani with all sorts of Pakistani food. My parents would only really make Pakistani and Indian food for us.
And still only make.
And still do. And Katlin grew up in Southwest Virginia in Russell County. So, you know, probably worth mentioning, you know, how you grew up and what you were eating.
Yeah, so, I mean, I grew up in Castlewood. I would sit on my grandmother's, you know, the top of the counter there while she was cooking. And literally, I would just ask questions. I remember my mom telling me, like, You've got to come down off the counter, like we've got things to do. So, you know, it's literally like growing up in your mom and your grandmom's kitchen. So I think that is maybe what makes it so nice, is that it's food that feels comforting to me, and I think it's food that feels comforting to Mohsin. And so when you combine those two elements together, the fact that it works is kind of odd. You know? It's unique that it even worked. So
and the beauty of it is, you know, my family's originally from Punjab, which is like the breadbasket of India and Pakistan. It's an agrarian society. Everyone's farming. They're providing food for the rest of the country. And when I hear stories about what Katlin's family knows about different things and how to grow them and when to grow them, it all sounds like things I've heard growing up with my family too.
Yeah, they're both agriculturally based societies. You know, we grew up preserving and canning, and because that's what you grew and that's what you needed to make it through the winter. And we also like value hard work. I think both cultures value a strong work ethic. And when you put that together, who would have thought that food could bring those elements of culture out? But they really do. So something that kind of got us going for this truck was we started thinking about ingredients. So take the food, break it down to the bare bone basics, right? What is in your food that makes it what it is? And so we're going to kind of, you can see our table spread here. We've got some of these things laid out for you. We're going to kind of jump into that a little bit. We started with a Venn diagram, a literal Venn diagram on paper. Maybe that's the educator in me, I don't know. But we talked about ingredients and just kind of what were inherently ingredients from Southwest Virginia, what were ingredients from Pakistan, and what did the two share in that middle part. And what we found at the end, you know, was that there's a lot more in the middle than there were on either side. So
yeah, I mean, just we learned how to cook by asking our families how they cooked and watching YouTube videos and just trying to soak in as much culture as possible to kind of make up our own food. I think our ignorance was bliss in this scenario. So
if we don't like it, we don't serve it.
yeah. So like I remember we would sit down and I made curry one night, which was just a chicken curry, tomatoes, onions, garlic, all that kind of stuff. And then Caitlin had made mashed potatoes the night before. Mm-hmm. And Caitlin put a bowl out with mashed potatoes and the curry on top. And you know, curry is traditionally served with rice.
Well, we were out of rice.
Yeah.
So I think I was like, we've got to let's just put these two things together, because in my head it made sense, and it actually made a lot of sense after we did it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, you subbed the gravy for the curry.
Yeah.
And subbed the rice for the mashed potatoes.
Who would have thought?
And lo and behold, Curry Me Down South was born, which is the dish that started the truck.
Yeah.
But should we start our Venn diagram?
We should start our Venn diagram.
Okay. You set that up. I'm going to zoom in a little bit.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to have, it's not a real Venn diagram, you know, it's hard to find circles. So we're going to have Pakistan on Mohsin's side, we're going to have Southwest Virginia on my side, and then we're going to have both in the middle. We're going to kind of go through some of these ingredients here. So I'm going to move this. This is our notes, our talking points. Tell me when you're ready, Mohsin.
Get started. Let's do it.
Okay, so what I'm going to start with is onion and garlic, because I feel like every dish in Southwest Virginia starts with onion and garlic. It's where your flavor comes from. You know, you break down an onion, you let it sweat, you throw in a garlic a little bit later so it doesn't burn. But I felt like that was inherently Southwest Virginia, because that is literally, in my mind, how everything begins. You know, we can talk a little bit about the fats that's used, the butter, the ghee, a lot of times bacon grease or some sort of animal grease. And that's what goes in first, obviously. But then everything after that is onion and garlic. So that's where I thought that was inherently us. You want to jump in there?
Yeah, sure. And you know, you can't go to a Pakistani person's house without saying, oh my God, it smells so good. And it's because onions and garlic are being fried all the time. It's the basis of every masala, and every flavor that you want to build is built on these two beautiful vegetables.
So because of that became a both.
Yeah.
And then let's move into, so my grandfather was big into Native American history, and he liked to talk about what we call the three sisters. So that would be squash, green beans, or any really climbing bean. I think around here it's mainly half runners, right? And then we don't have corn, but corn would be your third of the three sisters. And the logic behind it was pretty cool, right? You plant your corn, it grows. Then your climbing beans use the corn to climb. And then that creates shade for your squash. So ultimately those three work kind of in and of themselves together. So that being said, I felt like green beans along with squash was a very like southwestern Virginian staple, corn included, but was a staple for us. Mm-hmm,
mm-hmm. And you know, in Pakistan we have something called loki, which is a bottle gourd. It's a softer squash that you can make your own dish called loki with.
We make loki, it's good.
And we make it on the truck. We do have beans. We have red beans, and we use lentils a lot. But in this scenario, while we have some dishes with using half runners and string beans, we do also use loki. So
mainly the loki. Otherwise, green beans. You know, pinto beans are another Appalachian staple. Soup beans and cornbread was what, you know, if we didn't have it once a week, you weren't really eating. So you know, beans are a really big staple for us. So we're going to leave those on the Southwest Virginia side.
And you know, we don't have an ear of corn right now, but corn would also go in the middle. During the harvest of corn, they also harvest spinach and mustard greens, which, you know, we've talked about.
Collard greens.
And what we do is we make our saag with collard greens, spinach greens, and mustard greens. And they make, instead of cornbread, they make something called makki ki roti, and you eat it together. So we found ways to kind of combine those things and turn them into dishes. But once again, it's all about what's growing when and when that harvest happens. And it seems like all those dishes happen at the same time when it's in season. So I think one that I think we can claim for the Pakistani side would be peppers. We grow all types of, you know, hot peppers.
And all these would be hot right here?
Yeah, we'd say that these are all hot, and I know there's banana peppers in Appalachian
we use a lot of bell peppers. You know, we really probably don't use hot peppers as much. They were brought to us, so they're not inherently Appalachian, so I can't put them on our side. But we use a lot of peppers in general. So bell pepper specifically, banana pepper, There's all kinds of different varieties. It's how we did add a little bit of flavor and heat to our dishes.
Yeah.
But I would say green pepper, I'm still going to put all peppers on the Pakistani side.
And it's funny because, bell peppers have made their way into Pakistani food and Indian food, but it from what I've learned, it happened because of colonial rule. Yeah. And a lot of, British palates needed something that looked and tasted appealing but wasn't as spicy, so they started adding bell pepper into dishes like chicken jalfrezi and dishes that aren't truly authentic and culturally South Asian, but they've kind of made their way into every Indian restaurant that you could probably see.
For sure.
So this is a neutral / Pakistani pepper, but the hot ones we use in chutneys. We use them in all of our food, really, all of our marinades.
And we get the question a lot, is your food spicy? And we always counter that with, our food's not spicy, our food is flavorful. Mm-hmm. We use what we have from both cultures to create a dish that packs a flavorful punch, but it's not spicy in that, it's going to burn you. It's not like that.
Yeah.
So, we're constantly trying to I guess, create that narrative. If you will.
And we're trying to build flavors that show people the best of our cultures,
right.
And I think to hurt people by burning them right off the bat might be something that isn't exactly encouraging. So what we do is we make a chutney that's spicy that you can kind of put in it on the side if you're looking for that heat, which I always am.
Yeah, and each dish has, something maybe not known to them from the Pakistani side combined with something that they definitely know. Curry meat down south, we've talked about it already, but the curry may be more foreign to them, but combined with a mashed potato, something that they know and make and love, it creates a dish that they're not people, you don't have to be afraid of. You can experiment with it and really try it out.
Yep, and they're both our comfort foods, just combined together.
For sure. So I'm going to jump straight into my favorite. This time of year just speaks to tomatoes. Actually,
they're growing right behind us.
They're growing all over me. I'm actually overrun with them right now. But, I think about the tomato in Southwest Virginia and its varied uses around here. We can them every year. I think about, biscuits and gravy are a classic Southwest Virginia Appalachian thing. We add tomatoes to our biscuits and gravy. Like, tomato gravy is something that I grew up with as a kid, and it's, that's just one way that we incorporate it. Pretty much everything you eat during this time of year, you include a tomato with it. It's just either it's cut on the side, or it's chopped up in it, or it's created with the onions and garlic to create your base. But these are definitely not just Southwest Virginia, that's for sure. So. And you want to touch into those probably, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, tomatoes are the base of a lot of different curries, and really a lot of different vegetable dishes. Curry is kind of a blanket term you use for saucy food. We like our food saucy, and tomatoes are the basis of how to make them saucy. So, and it's funny, tomatoes came from the South American subcontinent, from Peru. So tomatoes are also an example of how globalized our society was before we even realized it. You'd think they came from Italy or something, but tomatoes hopped from Peru all the way over to Europe and then made their way back to southern Appalachia. And I think every culture uses a tomato in a different way.
And I love them. They're my favorite ever. And so, speaking of foods that aren't necessarily from here but came here and now we use as a staple, let's talk about some okra. So okra, of course, around here it's fried okra, but we really do it a lot of different ways. Everybody has their classic, whether it's fried squash or fried green tomatoes or fried okra, every family has their own trade secrets. But these actually came over, I think, in the slave trade from Africa, right?
From northern Africa, yeah.
So while we claim them, I guess they kind of came to us through different means. But I thought they were inherently Southwest Virginian. That's not the case.
Yeah, and I like to say okras are kind of as American as a banjo, because banjos also came from through Africa to the United States. But they also traveled north through Saudi Arabia to meet Pakistan. And, we call okra pindi, and the dish is its namesake as well. So I guess we put okra in the middle there, and we appreciate the contribution, because I think there are so many countries that make okra in their own special way. Fried, pickled.
Yeah, I mean,
around
we
here.
we pickle everything around here. Yeah, I didn't even touch on that. Even apples. We don't have apples, of course, here, but we broke it down to make apple cider vinegar, but even apple cider. But we use vinegar in a lot of our pickling and things like that. So the dish we make on the truck involves both tomatoes and okra to create our dish. It's actually not a fried okra.
Actually, you can make bindi with everything.
You can literally make it right here. Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to move ginger to you, because ginger is definitely not around here.
Yeah, so ginger is a tropical root that it can be ground, it can be chopped, it can be julienned, and it's a basis for a lot of the flavor building you do in a lot of vegetarian dishes. It's also a basis for a lot of marinades, for proteins, so that ends up on the Pakistani side, and I don't think I could live without ginger, to be honest with you.
And we joke about, they told me when I first started eating Pakistani food, like, if you find anything that's hard, don't chew it. Like, if you have a slice of ginger, he would disagree with me probably, but within the food you have whole spices and you have whole pieces of ginger, and you just kind of move those to the side. I think that's a good lesson to learn for any Indian or Pakistani food.
And a lot of people will take that out of their food before they serve it. But what we do is we just serve it like we'd eat it at home, and you get to partake in the experience of potentially biting into a clove. But
it's a good lesson.
Those things add the flavor that make food stand out, and I think
for sure
it's good.
What else we have here? We have potatoes.
We got potatoes, aloo.
We eat potatoes in Southwest Virginia about every way you can make them. Fried potatoes being a staple dish for my family, but again, they're in mashed potatoes. I mean, literally every
baked
dish.
Potatoes,
baked potato,
potato soup.
Oh my gosh, literally, they are such a staple for us in Southwest Virginia. I think
also
they're the
came
basis.
from South America.
Also from South America.
It's incredible, and I'm assuming and we're not fully read on this, but I'm assuming that potatoes went from South America. They made their way to Europe, and then the Scotch Irish came this way and brought potatoes with them.
That's what I would think. But yeah, I'm not really sure, so I'm not going to speak to it. But I do know that they are in both cultures, because sometimes they're in samosa. They're definitely in samosa.
You can put them in saag. You can make your own, potato curry, aloo bhuji. We use potatoes on the truck in a couple ways. We'll use the seasoning you'd make a potato curry with, and then we put it on our French fries with our tikka my senses.
And of course, they're in our mashed potatoes, and then French fries, obviously. Literally any way you can use a potato is what we're going to do with it.
We do all sorts of things.
They're in our samosas.
Yeah. So
we do a samosa pot pie, and I shut my mouth is the name of it. But that is a traditional pot pie filling. It's vegetarian, but you have your peas, your carrots, your potatoes, and then we fill it in a samosa shell and serve it with some of our different chutneys and imlis. But it is definitely a big ingredient on the truck.
Yeah,
for sure.
So we'll definitely put that in the middle there.
That goes in the middle, for sure.
I guess we could go to spices.
Yeah, we wish we had more to show you. Obviously, we use a variety of spices that I had never heard of until I married Mohsin. And those, I think, put some of our staple ingredients, they kind of bring it to a different level. And what we've learned from doing this is maybe it's the same ingredients, but it's a different process, or it's a different cooking method.
Yep.
We add different spices at different times, and so while the ingredients are the same, you can change multiple elements of cooking it to create those different flavors.
I agree, and I think the big differentiator between maybe Pakistani and Southern Appalachian food is the amount and the depth and the breadth of the spices you can add to the food.
Right. We just didn't have, tamarind. We really didn't have a lot of those spices until we started our globalized world in which we live in now. So now we luckily have all those things combined.
So this here is cilantro, but we actually harvest it for the coriander, which are the little seeds that come out when it bolts, and they have tons of flavor in them.
I was thinking, we have it drying right over here, but I don't think you can see it. We have this huge, massive thing that's drying for the coriander.
Sure,
you pull it over.
But yeah, so we use the cilantro for our chutney. We also use mint for chutney, which is something that pretty much grows everywhere now.
Mints. This mint we actually stole from the banks of a river nearby.
Yeah.
So that's it literally grows wild here, and
we tend to believe also that each river has a different flavor mint, so we're exploring and tasting
we've been gathering
in all sorts
it for
of
a while
places.
now. You know, and while we're talking about spices, freshness of spices matter. A lot of times we put them in our cupboard and we don't get them out for years, and then we may use it 1 or 2 times. But really, when you think about what a spice is, and a lot of them are ground, you know, things that grow. And so naturally, I think you've got to remember that the freshness of your spices is important. So that's something to keep in mind, just as a tidbit or rule of thumb.
And one thing I can say is we don't often use canned, vegetables in Pakistan because there was no access to canning. A lot of what, like you were saying with spices, they're dried. So what we would consume would be something that was dried, or it would be consumed at harvest. And I think the beauty of what happens here is that you can pickle them and can them and process them and change the flavors throughout its lifetime, whereas what we do is we apply that change to when we cook it. For example, with spices, you can fry them, you can toast them, you can...
Toasting's important for a lot of spices.
Absolutely. You can saute them, you can mix them into solutions until they infuse into the food.
And you build depths of flavor, right?
Yeah.
So if you use an onion and then you also use onion powder, you're increasing your depth of flavor. You know, that was a very Southwestern Virginia thing that my grandmother always told me. Like, you use the vegetable or whatever it is in multiple different forms, because then you're increasing that flavor that it creates. So we're going to touch on quickly. I don't have a mango, but I do have peaches. You know, cobbler's really common around here. So Mohsin jokes that peaches are Appalachian mangoes. And I don't disagree. I think that's a very...
They taste like candy.
Yeah.
When they come in season,
They're
people go
colored.
nuts for them.
Yep.
And then,
So we make a peach mango cobbler every year at our house. It just goes really well. Blackberry is my dad's favorite, but peach mango I think is definitely our favorite for sure. So, canned peaches and canned everything really around here is a staple.
And something we also didn't touch on are grains, right? So there's tons of grains that each of our cultures utilize. Like, we use chickpea flour, besan is what it's called.
I'd never heard of besan. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah, and I really didn't know what it was either until...
gluten-free?
It's gluten-free.
Yeah.
We found that a lot of our vegetarian options are gluten-free, they're vegan.
They happen to be vegan,
and people don't believe it when they try it, but it's that building of flavor and putting together things like cornbread on top and realizing it's gluten-free too.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of our vegan dishes, Indian, Pakistani vegan dishes are typically really, really good because, you may want to touch on this further, but in India, religiously, sometimes they don't eat meat. And so a lot of the vegetarian dishes pack this huge punch that you're like, wow, how is there no meat in that?
And then on top of that, we're so spoiled at the ability to eat meat, but even in Southern Appalachia, people didn't have access to meat. When they ate meat, it was a big deal, right? Yeah. And in Pakistan and India, with an agrarian society, you can have meat, but it's probably better to sell that for money than to consume it yourself when you've got this bounty of lentils and vegetables and things that when we went to Pakistan we had to try that we didn't know access to it here. I think that's a big aspect of why vegetarian food is so dominant. Flavors, however, I think happens to be the access between like being just west of China and just east of Europe. Pakistan was able to just funnel all of these amazing resources.
I agree with that. We joke that after we made this Venn diagram, the Pakalachian pretty much just kind of pushes them all together. And I think maybe that's the beautiful thing about our truck, is that it kind of consolidates it all into one, so that whatever was yours and whatever was mine no longer matters, because it just kind of pushed it together. So we want to kind of touch on, all of the stuff you see here came from our garden. We grew it, and we think that that's really important. We have people in this area who are local growers who are working really hard to create produce that is excellent quality. It's grown right here in our soil, and so 100% of the produce on our truck is sourced locally. We are working towards 100% everything sourced locally. That's a little bit harder to do, but our produce, everything that you have, will be grown either by us or by our local growers who we work with, and
even our suppliers when we have to buy in volume. Sometimes we go to local suppliers, local produce companies, and I think we try to grow heirloom as much as possible because we believe in Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
We believe in conserving and protecting biodiversity, and when you grow an heirloom vegetable or an heirloom anything, you're allowing a strain of genetic data to thrive in a world where we're buying just like monoculture vegetables.
And I think about it, it was a thing in my family to pass down seeds. So I was taught how to seed save since I was little, because that's just what you did. Especially heirloom tomatoes, we would, there's a process to saving tomato seeds. It's not just take them out and put them on something to dry. Like, you have to let them mold. I mean, there's some really unique things about saving seeds.
And saving seeds is preserving knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Mohsin mentioned at the beginning that he has a focus in sustainability and conservation, and I have a focus in education, and we really try to bring out our two passions on this food truck. Yes, it's just a food truck, but it's more than that to us. We have an opportunity to share things with people that maybe they're not as familiar with, and I think that that's something both of us try to really, really hard to push.
Yeah, we feel really lucky to be able to express ourselves by just being creative with food and giving people something that makes them feel as comfortable as we feel when we eat it because of our memories with it. And I think we feel so lucky over the last couple of years to keep building relationships with our customers and every step of the way just educating.
And that shows up in like little ways sometimes. We've done a pop-up at Barter Theater Stage 2 a couple times, and we'll put plants that are native plants
that look like weeds, just like in a field.
Yeah, but we'll put those on tables, and then with a little note card that explains why they're good for this area, that they're native to this area, that we need to keep them in this area. And I think that's little ways that we try to show the things that we value.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I've learned working in conservation is that people don't really appreciate something until they know a little bit about it.
Sure.
And I think you taught me that with education, at least. Like, if you can explain to someone the significance of something or where its place is in society, in the world, in an ecosystem, people start to remember it and identify it and feel close to it, because we have so much to be proud of in this area.
I was going to say, that's inherently Appalachian, right? That pride, almost to the point of maybe a little too much pride sometimes, but that pride for what we have and doing it ourselves and creating within what we were given, I think is an important
And this is the most biodiverse place, arguably, in the United States. There's more living things, plants, animals, insects, bugs, than anywhere else in the country. And people don't know that until you tell them.
And we really haven't even talked about, we compost all of our food waste. We try to have like a no waste mentality in terms of when we do sometimes sell out, it's because we don't want to have anything that we waste. And I think that's a really important principle we stand by. Compostable containers, biodegradable containers.
Yep, we're working on
spoons.
Wooden spoons. We're working on filtering our fry oil and turning it into biodiesel.
Long-term goal.
Yeah, whatever it takes to have as little bit of an ecological footprint as possible, while also saving money and resources while we do it.
It's really important stuff. So that's the Pakalachian, I guess you could say, in a nutshell. I know we went a little bit all over the place, but we were happy to join for this event. And I hope that, if anything, you've kind of seen, what both of our cultures are about to a degree, and how we came together to create just a food truck.
Yep, and we're proud to do it here. We could have done it in other places, but we wanted to do it here.
Yep.
And I hope you guys enjoy all the other people speaking.
Yeah.
And
if you have any ideas for dishes, let's say you're familiar with both cultures, we are happy to take suggestions. Anything that's a 50-50 split, so if you think of something, just shoot us an email. And that being said, you can reach us on multiple different platforms. We are the only Pakalachian that ever existed. So if you Google the Pakalachian, you're going to find us. We're at the Pakalachian on all forms of social media, thepakalachian.com, the Pakalachian at Gmail. Literally, we're it. So
And we won't spell it because it's probably written somewhere in our description
guarantee
right
it's
now.
written on in our description somewhere.
But
so.
thank you so much.